All right, today I've got a magic trick for you. Now, you see how these stacks of cash look really, really similar? They're both stacks of $100 bills, but they're very slightly different. You see, this one's got the back facing you and this one's got the front facing you, okay? Very similar though. They're basically the exact same thing, and in dollar values, they really are, but there's a slight difference. Let's say this hand over here needs this facing you, okay? Don't ask me why. Maybe they took out a loan and thisward facing dollars, all right? And they got to pay it back. So you want to swap your dollars for your other dollars and hopefully not have them disappear like that. Well, have I got a protocol for you. It's called Curve. Now, some of y'all who've been around a few years in DeFi, you know Curve all too well. They're fantastic. But in case you haven't met Curve, let me tell you about them. So Curve is a fantastic little protocol for swapping assets that are basically the same thing, okay? So if you got a dollar stablecoin and another dollar stablecoin, you can swap them back and forth for basically $1, almost guaranteed, all the time, safely, easily, and most importantly, cheaply. Yeah, I know I'm a cheapskate, but you know what? I'm not gonna apologize. It works. What you do is you can go to Curve and you can have a pool built, and you can build it with all kinds of different assets. Now, they actually have it to where you can build any assets in a pool together, but it's really best at assets that are stable, okay? So you've got like Ethereum and wrapped Ethereum. You've got, staked ETH and ETH, okay? Things that are basically the same thing. There might be an extra earning component on one of them slightly, but they're basically the same thing. As ETH goes up, they both go up, all right? And also stablecoins, all kinds of stablecoins. This is the home. They go here and it's fantastic. You'll find all of the top ones. You'll find Frax, USDC, USDS, DM, PayPal stablecoin, Frax. I mean, all of them are here, okay? Because it's truly a fantastic place. Normally, when you have a decentralized exchange, they use what's called an AMM model. Go watch our video if you don't know what an AMM is. But simply put, it's a special way of always being able to have liquidity and do your trades at any time. It's quick, it's efficient, but if you have a massive imbalance between the assets in the pool, the prices will massively change. Well, the problem is, what if you don't want the prices to change? What if the two things really are just both a dollar coin? Well, simple. You make it so that it barely moves. How do you do it? Wizardry, I know. Well, they have a really cool little system. I'm going to call it a dampener, but honestly, they actually call it amplitude, but it's amplitude of the dampening. So we're calling it dampeners, okay? And what they do is they dampen the volatility. How they do this is, instead of having it do a normal formula where it's X times Y equals K, and massive changes occur in price based on the ratios between them, they have that, but they have another component that is this plus this equals that. Now, that would just make the price the same. It wouldn't really move. And what they do is they have this formula, the traditional AMM market one, and this formula that basically says it's a linear, perfectly straight price. This one says it goes this way, this goes this way. I know, a lot of movement here. But what they do is they say, hey, we want this one that has it flat. We want this to be more important than the one that goes crazy up and down. All right? So let's dampen this volatility, and now it'll go like this until the very edge where it does that. All right? So what happens is almost all the volatility that you would normally see in the first, let's call it 80%, depending on how much dampening has been done, or 90%, is safe for that last 5 to 10%. All right? So if it ever gets to where it's 95, 96% one asset in the pool and 4% the other, that other 4% is going to lose almost all of its value instantly. It's going to go down massively. But the benefit to that is, for the first 80 or 90%, these things are staying almost perfectly even. They might move by a fraction of a penny or something, just enough to where maybe somebody could make a positive value trade out of it, but they're going to stay really, really, really close in price. And that's the whole point. The whole point of this is to let people be able to trade one asset for the other asset they need at a very low cost, very reliably, and in huge volumes, okay? And I use Curve all the time. It's one of my most used protocols, okay? And saying that is a serious thing because I use a lot of different protocols, and the ones I use them heavily. And you know what? Curve is still towards that absolute top. It's in my top 3 protocols of all time, hands down. This dampening of volatility lets you trade big orders of similar assets, so you can always swap. Say you've got some USDC, but you really need some fracks, or you got some fracks, but man, you got to get DM because that's what your loan's denominated in. Bam, you can swap. It'll cost you almost nothing at any time. It's fantastic. But because it's such a good trading experience, it's such a good swapping. I don't even want to call it trading. You're swapping your stuff. The fees are still pretty good, but the fees alone are just not enough because Curve was clever enough to have an emission schedule. In fact, they were one of the pioneers of an emission schedule. For anybody who doesn't know what an emission schedule is, it's basically a way to incentivize liquidity and reward people for doing certain things in a protocol with the governance token of that protocol. Now, it's not always the governance token, but it almost always is. And so what they do is they have every week new Curve tokens that get put out and put into pools. And they base this on the pool gauge vote. Basically, every pool can get a gauge put on it and people can vote, hey, I want my ratio of the total votes of the emissions to go to that one or that one or that one. And you can actually pick, percentage breakdowns and stuff. And there's whole secondary markets we can talk about selling your votes as well. They're absolutely fantastic and I love it. So what you do is you benefit from the swap fees, number 1. Number 2, you're going to benefit from all the Curve emissions that are coming in. And then there's actually other platforms where you can sometimes take your liquidity tokens to and put them and lock it up with them, and they'll give you additional rewards on top of that. That's outside the scope of this video, but just know there's a 3rd layer of rewards, which is just juicy and delicious. What's in it for Curve? Well, the answer is half of the trading fees. See, what Curve does is it takes half of the trading fees and it gives half of the trading fees to the people who provide the liquidity. Seems fair, they built the platform. Now, what happens with those fees? Well, they get distributed to people who have locked up their Curve tokens in their governance system. So you can lock it up to 4 years, all right? And the longer you have it locked up, the more voting power you have for the gauge emissions we talked about, and it also lets you get nice, sweet stablecoin rewards. Now, in the past, it used to be the 3 Curve pool. They had a wrapper for it, and it was basically DAI, Tether, and USDC, okay? Reasonably decent. We can argue about the value of Tether and how it might not be safe. And nowadays, makers trying to position away from DAI, and they're going into the USDS route, which is much more centralized and a little concerning sometimes. So, like, I can understand why they swapped it to their Curve USD stablecoin. It's not my favorite stablecoin, but it's not a bad one. It's up there. Comment below if you want me to do a stablecoin ranking list. These fees obviously get paid out in their stablecoin, and you can go collect them whenever you want. And they accrue nice and slowly, but consistently. But the real value is in the secondary bribe market. Because once you've got these things locked up and you're getting the fees, you can also go out there and get paid to vote a certain way. So the yield that you can get on some of these things can be really high, like really high. And a bunch of it is in stable coins. The bribe rewards can be in all kinds of different things. We can talk about that in a separate video. But that's why this whole platform works. People want these Curve tokens, and so them being allocated to these pools is a real reward for the people who are providing liquidity in the pools. And if you out there say, that's great and all, but I still don't want these Curve tokens, that's fine. I'm happy to buy them from you. I have a tremendous position in Curve. Full disclosure, I have a bunch of them. Planning to get more. I like my emissions. I like buying them. I like other places that I'm getting them from, okay? Curve is a pretty good protocol. I like it. Cards on the table, cash on the table. It's a protocol I'm pretty heavily into. I like it. It's great stuff. That's why I'm heavily into it. I know, crazy thought. Oh, it's a good thing, so I will put money in. But just like DD, if I see something that makes sense, I want it. Give it. I'm buying it. Because it just makes sense to. Okay? So, how does this work with things that aren't perfectly stable, okay? Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Dollar and dollar coin, 2 different Ethereum tokens. Sure, makes sense. But what about something like pairing Bitcoin, Ethereum, and maybe a random stable coin, like in one of their tri pools? I've seen several of these. Some of them have millions and millions of dollars in volume locked up. Why? How does this make sense? I know about impermanent loss. Why would you ever do this? And the answer is the dampener. So it's not perfect. You still suffer impermanent loss. This is risky, does not guarantee a return. All the disclosures I can possibly give to you, I need to give to you right now, right here, fully upfront. I don't recommend you putting your money in one of these tri-pools. At least not a tri-pool with multiple different assets that aren't meant to be pegged to each other. Okay? Because while Bitcoin and Ethereum tend to go up together, that doesn't mean they always will. That doesn't mean one of them can't go down massively while the other goes up or vice versa. And you have impermanent loss. It would be a real shame if that happened. A lot of people add in a stable coin additionally to this to help dampen it even more, but that just makes things worse sometimes. Because if 2/3 of your thing is adding in value in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and one of them is in a stable coin, you've just not got a clear strategy here. You're just doing the shotgun approach. Hope one of these works. Bam, bam, bam. You need to take a little bit more prudence with your action. But it can make sense in a certain capacity. If you really, really want exposure to these 3 assets and you can't live with the price of them going like this constantly based on the makeup of the pool, it may make sense to have some dampening, okay? If you insist on doing it, this is a better way to do it. Still can't fully recommend it, but it's a whole lot better than going in a normal AMM and shoving the 3 in there, because the impermanent loss will destroy your position. Even if it's good, you'll be shocked at how much you didn't gain because of impermanent loss. So, dampening volatility in something that might not be a safe thing to put it in is not the best thing you can do, but it's certainly much better than the worst thing you could do. So, that's a nice little thing they can do. Another thing is, there are some tokens that may not be perfectly pegged. Like, let's take the synthetic dollar of USDE, okay? They are not a stable coin. They are not redeemable for and backed in the same way that a lot of other good stable coins are. This is a debt position based on them trading perpetuals effectively. Now, protocol's interesting. We're actually working on some similar stuff in the Overlord Club, but this thing is not guaranteed to stay at $1, and it doesn't have a perfect mechanism for returning to $1. Like, there's a lot of things here that say, hey, yeah, this could be trading at 90 cents or, $1.05 over the coming years. It can happen. Much more so than a good stable coin. All right. So you might want to put this in a pool with 2 other actual stable coins and dampen it like crazy. Because then if the price deviates, you might still be more okay than you otherwise would. And you've been benefiting while all these fees are going back and forth and stuff for the entire time that it's been around. And, in the long term, you'll still come out ahead even if it depegs to the slight downside if you've been in it a long time, especially with those curve emissions. A lot of people just want to earn these extra curve emissions on some of their other assets. A minute ago, we talked about how people are putting Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a stable coin in there. Now, while this is a terrible idea, I just don't like it. If you're getting paid in curve emissions, and those curve emissions are also paying you in stable coins, this can be a way to take Bitcoin, which is sometimes pretty hard to earn a really good return on, though we do have a few ways here, and Ethereum, which honestly you can earn a decent return on, and a stable coin, which you can earn fantastic rewards on. Heck, you can go get 20% in the Overlord Club right now on most of the good ones. All right? But that Bitcoin, people want exposure to it. It's hard to earn good rewards on it. And they can bundle all 3 of them up, say it's a little safer this way, and curve emissions. We like our curve emissions. And that's how a lot of people justify it. And honestly, it's hard to fault them, even though it's not something I do and it's not something I intend to do. I don't think it's actually a great investment, but I can certainly understand why some people do it. And you can do this with other assets, and it may make a lot more sense. There's a whole universe in the Curve universe that we can go into, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. So if you want to hear about how it plugs in and plays with all kinds of different other protocols, let me know in the comments below. Tell me, what more would you like to learn about? And would you like to hear about how Curve almost blew up because its founder had to buy himself a third mansion?